Hello and welcome to the MMO development class. So today I want to address one of the issues that I currently have with our implementation of CGS. Namely, errors don't get handled particularly gracefully. If we look at some of the things that could cause errors, such as our background property throwing all these exceptions, we can see that that behavior isn't going to be necessarily what we, want to happen. We would really like some way to have errors be reported to the user somehow. Now, because we're writing a language, we will definitely want to not only be able to present the errors to the user, but we would also want to be able to tell them which file the error happened in and on what line that error happened on. So yeah, this is gonna be fun. There's gonna be two things that we need to handle. Both the errors that could happen as a result of invalid property information, and that logic is inside of our properties themselves, and also errors that happen during the compilation process. So we're going to have to look at our parser and our lexer and our tree, or not so much the tree, because assuming it gets through the parser, it should get through the tree parser. We're going to have to modify some of the code here in our parser and our lexer. Now, as you guys are aware, our parsers are compiled from ANTLR, and they give us this nice little partial class. But fortunately, on the parsers and the lexers, they also give us a method that we can override. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new class called a CGS lexer, which is going to have to be marked as partial. And now both on the parser and the lexer, I can create I believe it is a public override void display recognition error. Now, the display recognition error is going to be invoked whenever an error occurs, or a parser error or a lexer error. So let's figure out how we might want to go ahead and test this sort of stuff. Right now, we don't have the concept of a compiler yet being exposed publicly through our application. What I mean by that is our compilers, our CGS tree or CGS parser and CGS lexer, they aren't actually public classes, although for some reason they're marked as public right here. They really shouldn't be, or they are. But what I want to do is I want to basically wrap the entire compilation process into a single class that will handle basically what we've been doing in our tests. If you recall, if we go back to our parser tests, we are manually instantiating our parser and our lexer, and then if you look at our tree parser test, we're manually instantiating our tree, and so on and so on. I want that to be handled by a class that we can instantiate. So by doing that, what we can do is we can go ahead and do some stuff with some things, if that sounds good for everybody. So inside my compiler, I'm going to expose a style sheet compiler class, and this is basically going to be the you can consider this class to be the entry point for our entire compiler project. And now what it's going to do is it's going to handle all of the compilation things, or the compilation processes. Now, for a single style sheet, which means we will need a style sheet builder being passed into it. So our style sheet builder, if you are aware, or if you guys recall, are the interfaces that are used to construct an in-memory representation of a style sheet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a couple methods, because I want my style sheet compiler to have a couple methods. I want a compile method that takes in a stream. Then I want a couple other handy compile methods, one that takes in a input and one that takes in a file location. So we'll have a compile input and we'll have a compile file, and that should be all good. Now the cool thing about this is we can actually write all three of these methods in terms of a single method that I'm going to make down here. It's going to be a private void compile that takes in one of ANTLR's built-in interfaces, and that is an iCharacter stream. I'm also going to accept a file name as well. And the reason I'm doing that is because I want to retrieve the file name at some point in order to display the appropriate error messages. So what I can do is I can now basically do what we've done before with our tests. Like if we went to our property tests, we create our parser, which is wrapped in a common token stream, which is wrapped in a lexer, which is wrapped in an ANTLR string stream. Now, fortunately, what it needs right here is an iCharacter stream, so we can go ahead and do a couple fun stuff with that, or a couple fun things with that. So what I'm going to do is first I'm going to create our lexer. And our lexer is a CGS lexer, and our lexer is going to take in our stream and our... No, we don't really need anything else for the lexer anyway. The lexer is pretty straightforward. It doesn't actually need anything. Although, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, the lexer does need to be able to report errors. So we need to figure out where we are going to be reporting errors. And I think the thing that makes the most sense is going to be the iStylesheet builder interface. Have that interface have a method that allows us to log out an error of some sort that's associated with a particular style sheet builder. I would say that makes the most sense. So let's jump into the iStylesheet builder interface and let's create a log method. Now the log method is, in my last implementation of CGS, I did the same thing, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take in a value object that represents an error or a log item. And that log item is a combination of a message, a level, and a file location. And a file location is a combination of a file, a line, and a character position. So by combining those two value objects together, what we're going to get is a log message of some kind. So I'm going to go ahead and call this a style sheet log item. The actual style sheet log item class is going to be in my value objects namespace, and I'm going to go ahead and give it some awesome parameters for its thingy. So what we need to do is we need a message. We need a style sheet log item level, and we need a file location. Okay, so our style sheet log item level is just going to be an enumeration. And that enumeration is going to contain kind of the default three main types of things you might want to include in the log item level. We have info, warning, and error. Now our file location, like I said before, oops, I don't want it to be called class 1, that's not very semantic. I want to go ahead and give it a string file, a unsigned int line number, and an unsigned int character position. So file location is representative of where in a particular file something happened. So the last thing that I want to go ahead and do is I want to make debugging a little bit easier by providing two-string implementations for all of my value objects I just created. So I'm going to create a public override toString for the file location. This is simply going to return the file line character position. And there's our awesome two-string implementation. And now we're going to be reusing that two-string implementation on our style sheet log item. because he is going to have a public override toString that returns the level, the message, followed by the location. Or actually, you know what? I'm going to do the location followed by the level followed by the message. I think that makes a little bit more sense. So I'm going to say enum.getName just to make sure we don't get any integers being printed out for our level. And then our argument 2 is going to be our basic message. So that'll make printing this out a little bit easier for our style sheet log item. Okay, so now that we have our log item, our log level, and our file location, those are the main classes that we're going to need, I can go back into my builder, and I now have a log method. Yeah, testing this is going to be a little bit interesting, so we'll see what happens with that. Yeah, I want to figure out how the API is going to look first, and then I'll worry about testing. So if we go back to our compiler, what we can do now is we can, well, have some stuff. We can go ahead and instantiate our lexer, and our lexer, I'm going to create an overload of its constructor that takes in the builder. The reason I'm doing that is because the lexer needs to be able to print log errors out to the user. So I'm going to create a constructor on my lexer that takes an iCharacter stream and a builder. This constructor is going to be written in terms of the base constructor that takes an iCharacter stream input. So what we need to do now is we need to implement our display recognition error method. And displaying a recognition error is, like I said, that is what happens when ANTLR runs into a compilation error. So the first thing I need to do is get the message. Well, fortunately, let's see here. For some reason I thought, yeah, it does. Okay, so there is a get error message method implemented in ANTLR, and what this does is this prints out the string representation of a particular recognition exception. So what I can do here is I can go ahead and say var message equals get error message, passing in the recognition error and our token names. This will give us a human readable error message that we can then send into our builder. So I can say builder.log new style sheet log item. I can pass in the message. I can pass in the level, which is going to be always an error, and I can pass in the file location. Now, this is going to be a little bit interesting because we not only need the file, but we need the line and the character position. Now, fortunately, the recognition exception contains a token. So I'm going to ignore the file for now, and instead what I'm going to do is, so that's the file that I'm ignoring. I'm going to write out my other ones that I already know how to do, which is going to be e.token, which is the token that caused the problem. And I'm going to go ahead and make sure that it's not null. If it's not null, I'm going to print out e.token_line, which is the line number, otherwise 0. And then I'm going to do e.token_character_position_inline, or whoops, if token does not equal null, e.character_position_inline, otherwise 0. Now I am going to have to cast this to an unsigned integer because token line is an integer. Okay. So the last thing I have to do for the display recognition error is I need a file name. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to have the file name be propagated through our compilation process and passed into the constructor of my CGS lexer. And yes, I'm not doing pure TDD. It's kind of a combination of test after and test before, but it's not TDD. I generally don't really do TDD a whole lot, it depends on what I'm doing. In this case, I just want to get the API figured out first, and then I'll see about writing tests for it. Because for me, the API is a little bit more important, and unfortunately, the API of this is not going to be exposed a whole lot to the user because there's a lot of internal moving parts we have to thread stuff through. So I just don't see there to be much of a benefit of doing pure TDD right now. But we will be testing our error handling. It's just I need an API to write it against first, and I don't feel like writing that API with a test that won't compile yet. Although I do that sometimes. It really depends on the circumstance. The only rule that I take away from programming is that there really are no rules. So I just use whatever makes sense given the particular situation. Like, for example, I find doing test-driven development for writing like basic CRUD ASP.NET MVC applications to be absolutely silly, because in reality, what are you testing? I mean, if all your controllers do is go to some service layer that sets some property on an entity and saves it within Hibernate, what exactly are you testing by testing that controller? You're basically just testing in Hibernate, which is silly because in Hibernate's already tested. Now, if there's a lot of business logic that should be tested, then yeah, write a test for it, or many tests for it, but not for when there's nothing to test in the first place. That's just a waste of time. Okay, so then I'm going to write my parser, or instantiate my parser. And my parser needs a token stream, and my token stream is going to be my lexer. Then I'm going to create another constructor on my parser for my builder. Actually, oh yeah, I never sent my builder into my parser or my lexer. I only sent my builder into my tree. Okay, so that means I'm going to have to write another constructor, this time for my CGS parser. So I'm going to go ahead and have ReSharper generate that constructor for me, which it does, and includes a little base right there, which is good. Then I'm going to have my builder and my file name as fields. And then I'm going to implement the display recognition error. And I know this is going to be super surprising for everybody, but it's pretty much going to be the exact same code as what I had before. There's really no difference. What is ReSharper complaining about? Parameter token names hides field token names. I don't care. Okay. Well, no, this is bugging me. Error token names. There we go. Got rid of that warning. Okay, so now that we have our parser and our lexer implemented, actually there's no reason for me to have the character stream as a field, so I'm going to remove that entirely. Now that we have those implemented, we are now properly threading our builder through everything. So the next thing I want to go ahead and do is I want to instantiate my tree. Now my tree is going to be a new CGS tree. Wait a sec, how did I do this before? No, my common tree is going to be parser.compile. That's going to return my common tree. Then I have to instantiate my tree parser. My tree parser is going to be a new CGS tree, and it's going to take in my common stream, my builder, and my file name. So my common tree, it's actually going to be a new common tree node stream with a common tree as an argument to that. Then I'm going to pass in my builder and my file name, although it's weird. Oh, you know what? I passed that into the parameter there, didn't I? So I don't even need to pass the builder into it. I'm just going to pass in my common tree and my file name, and then I'm going to create a constructor for my CGS tree. And this is going to cause a problem because because I didn't do the base invocation. Okay, so now I just need my file name. Okay, so now I can go ahead and write the method for... Well, actually, no. The CGS tree isn't going to be causing any recognition errors. At least it shouldn't be. So I'm not going to even worry about doing the display whatever, blah, blah, blah. I'm just going to keep that in my... Because, yeah, what's going to happen is my builder is going to have a reference to the log. And since my tree grammar all he does is invokes methods on my builders, then my builders will be able to perform their own error logging. Okay, so we have our stuff. So all I got to do to finish off this method is I have to actually go ahead and tell it to compile. So tree parser dot build style sheet builder, and that's it. So yeah, there's my compile method, but this is just my base compile method. It's a private method. I have 3 other methods that I want to write in terms of it. We'll have our stream compile method, which I'll be able to, fortunately, there is a stream, ANTLR input stream, is it? Yeah. There's an iCharacter stream implementation called ANTLR input stream that takes in a stream. The file name I'm just going to call stream, because we don't even have the file name at that point, so there's no point in saying anything. Then I'm going to do an ANTLR string stream, passing in input and passing in a string as the file name. Now the compile file method is going to pass in a new ANTLR file stream, passing in the file path, and then I'm going to pass in the file path there. I don't know why I called it file path. I think file name is a better name. Okay, so we have our 3 compile methods that all boil down to this. The only important thing about this is that it properly instantiates my common token or my CGS lexer and CGS parsers with my builder and my file name threaded through it, which means that, yeah, so we're one step closer. So let's go ahead and figure out how we are going to externally receive log messages. So there needs to be a way for me to know if an error happened, because I can tell the style sheet builder that an error happened by invoking the log method, but I need a way to know if an error happened otherwise. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just, the simplest implementation that I can think of honestly is an event. So I'm going to create an event of action style sheet log item item logged, and that should be good. So now I'm going to go ahead and implement these 2 members in their derived classes. And why are you item logged is never subscribed to blah blah blah, I don't care. Okay, so if you guys recall, we have 2 style sheet builders. We have the one that works and the one that doesn't do anything except for allows us to test. So we have our mock style sheet builder and our real one. For our mock style sheet builder, I am just going to keep log as an empty method because it doesn't really do anything. Now, for our real style sheet builder, things get a little bit more interesting. When we log, I'm going to go ahead and say I'm going to invoke item logged, and that's really about it. I mean, can't really get much simpler than that, and I'm not that much against this implementation, just thinking about if there's a better way to do it, but you know what, this is the most straightforward thing I can do. Okay, so actually, this brings up an interesting point. Does anybody know why you should write code that fires an event like this? Anyone know why I'm aliasing out my event into a local field and then invoking it? Well, yes, but I could have just done this if I wanted to. It's actually because of multi-threading. If I wrote this code right here, and I just said if item logged does not equal null, invoke item logged, what's going to happen is if somebody manages on another thread to unsubscribe from my item logged event after the null check but before the invocation, it'll throw an exception. That's just a little tidbit. Anyway, so if you're ever invoking events, this is what you should do. I mean, generally speaking, you should have something like resharper generate your item invoker for you, which you can do as well. But because this event's only invoked from one method, I'm not even going to worry about creating another method. So, yeah. Okay, so I now should be able to test basic things. Basic log message. So let's go ahead and see if we can get our basic, let's see if we can get a parser error to happen. So I'm going to say error handling tests. So I'm going to write a public void parser error called log item. And I'm first going to, whoops, I want a test fixture. We'll mark this as a test. Okay, so my things that I need is I first need a, actually, you know what? I am going to, in my fake style sheet builder, I am going to invoke the event. Or a better thing to do for this, I'm going to, yeah, okay, so I'm going to private list of style sheet log items. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ignore the event. I don't really care about if the event I don't really care, like, honestly, if the event specifically gets invoked. I'm not going to test that. Instead, what I'm going to test is that my log items get filled with something that's an error. So I'm going to say public IEnumerable style sheet log items. This will make the test a little bit easier to write for us. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to instantiate my fake builder, which is going to be a new style sheet builder in tests. And then I'm going to instantiate my compiler, which is going to be a new style sheet compiler, and I'm going to pass in my fake builder. Then I'm going to say compiler.compile test, background is blue, and I'm not going to have a semicolon at the end of that. And then what I need is I need my fake builder. So fake builder log items should have, I always forget the should. Actually, I'm just going to be lazy. Count should be 1, and var log item equals fake builder dot log items dot single log item should, or no, log item dot level should be log style sheet log item level dot error, and then log item dot location dot file should be string, and log item location character position should be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. 1, 2, 3, 4. So should be around 24. Okay, so let's go ahead and see what happens now. Null reference exception. Ooh. Looks like our common tree is returning null. Well, that isn't... Okay. I guess it's going to be null, then. But, wait. No? Compile, return common string tree. Huh. Alright. Well, let's... Wait a sec, what? What exactly is null here? This is weird. Let's figure this out. Our parser is definitely not null. Now our parser compile is invoking stylesheet, and stylesheet is returning a null reference exception because why? Why is it doing that? That's dumb. I wonder if not the right constructor got invoked. Huh. So it gets to there, and then it throws an exception because adapter is null. What's adapter? An adapter is an iTree adapter. Why would that ever be null? I don't know. Is it ever set to anything? Let's see here. So we have a... Ooh. Well, yeah. That's what it's... I figured it out. Okay, I'm invoking the wrong constructors. That's horrible OOD, by the way. Okay, so I'm changing base to this. Yeah, it still is pretty dumb. I mean, why should it matter which... Whatever. Whatever. World won't end. Expected 1 but found 2. Node from line mismatched tree node. Expected 1 but found 2. Okay, so I'm getting 2 log errors for some reason from this one problem. Let's figure out what those 2 errors are. I'm going to jump into my fake style sheet builder, set a breakpoint on log, and find out who is invoking this twice. Because maybe it's just ANTLR invoking it twice, which is fine, really. I don't really care. Oh, shut up. Stop this. Okay, message, no viable alternative at input blank, and this is on my parser. Then I get another one on my parser, and the error is missing ocurly at... Okay, so I get a no viable alt and a missing ocurly. So I'm going to go ahead and just say that's the behavior I want. So I'm going to change my test to say count should be 2. We'll retrieve the first. And yeah. Okay, expected 24 but found 25. Don't care. I'm just going to make this test pass because it's doing everything that I want it to. Alright, so yeah, basic error handling works. I am curious though, what exactly is my tree if there's an error? I should already know this, but I forgot. The tree is... Oh, wait a sec. I can just go ahead and say common tree to string tree. Okay. So honestly, I don't even want to do any tree parsing if there was an error with the previous thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and introduce another thing on my iStylesheet builder interface. I'm going to create a property called bool is in error state, and that is going to be set to true if an error happens. So that way we can know if we should continue with our parsing or not. So is an error state will be set to true, or so if item dot level equals error, then set is an error state to true. Actually, no, I don't want to discard a style sheet if there's a property error. So I'm going to introduce another level. I'll have info warning error and parse error. And then if it's a parse error, I'm going to set as parsing error, rename that, and do that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to say if builder has parsing error, then return. I don't want to do anything if there's a parsing error anywhere during the process. Okay, so that should prevent my tree from ever parsing, which actually, that might, oh, okay, well, it doesn't matter. Yeah, so I think that works out pretty well. If there's ever a parsing error sent in, or wait a sec, derp, I forgot to actually change my test because these should now be parse errors. And I forgot to change my things over here from error to parse error. Oh yeah, there's a difference between an error because the user typed in a property wrong and an error that happened because the user didn't get the syntax of the language right. I'm just going to bail. If they get the syntax and language wrong, I'm just going to bail out. I'm not going to spend a whole bunch of time trying to figure out all the millions different permutations a way a user can get the language wrong. But if they get a property wrong, I don't want the entire style sheet to blow up just because they got one property wrong. Okay, so now what I need to do is... So parse error is basically like a fatal error, yeah. Which I could call a fatal error, but I'm not going to because I want to move on. Okay, so next one I want to do unknown property causes log item. So what if I told CGS to do an unknown property, like unknown equals red? So technically this is valid CGS, it will get through the parser, but it'll blow up when we try to build out the style sheet. Because after I compile it, if I do fake builder.build, actually I don't even think I'll need to do fake builder.build. I think I should just be able to run this and there should be an exception. Oh no, there's not. Okay, now there should be an exception. Yeah, there we go. Well, no. That's because I'm using my fake builders. I'm going to have to use my real builders. So I'm going to say builder equals new, because now I'm testing my builder, which, honestly, I don't even need my compiler for this, which I'm not even going to put in, because that's not even appropriate for the test. So I'm going to say var builder equals cgs.engine.internal style sheet builder needs an iProperty repository. How did I do this before? I instantiated a new CGS environment. Okay, so I'm just going to do this. And then I'm going to say builder.createStyle So style builder equals style builder dot create selector, or selector equals selector dot set class selector test. And then I'm going to say style builder dot set property unknown to new identifier value red. Oh, it needs to be an enumerable. Okay, so then I should be able to say var sheet equals style builder dot build. Actually, no. This should cause an exception. There we go. That's the exception I was looking for. So the first thing to make this test pass is I don't want it to cause an exception when there's an unknown property. The second thing I need to do is I need to make sure that it has a log item. So I'm going to create var log items equals new list of sheet log item. I'm going to say builder dot item logged plus equals dot add, which, okay, so there should be one log item, and it should have a message should be unknown property unknown, or how about unknown is not a valid property. Okay, so now we have quite a few issues already that we have to address with the API. So set property, first of all, it says sequence contains no matching element. Now that's because in my set property method, I'm using type equals get property type. It's like, where is this even being thrown? Oh, you know what? It's being thrown right in my CGS environment. So I'm going to change get property type from first to first or default. Then run this test again, and I should get an exception up here. Property type unknown not supported. So instead of doing this, I need to log an item, which means, oh, this is going to be fun. Which means I need a way to thread through my style sheet builder so that I can log something with it. If that makes sense? Okay, so what I'm going to do is in this constructor, I'm going to say style sheet builder builder. Okay, so then instead of saying throwing a new invalid operation exception, I'm going to say builder.log new style sheet log item, and then I want my error to look like this. Now, of course, if we were better people, we would be doing some internationalization right now, but since we're terrible people, we're not going to be. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, so the next thing I need a level. My level is going to be error. And the final thing is I need a location. So, here's the interesting thing. We need to get the file location for when this property, where this property was set. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a parameter called file location, and I'm going to rename it file location. then I'm going to return. So after setting this error, I'm going to return out. So now whoever invokes setProperty needs to pass in a file location. Does that make sense? Because we need to know where the property was set from. It's a little bit messier than I would want, but it'll work. Okay, so let's deal with these errors first. I need to redo when I instantiate my style builder, I need to pass in the style sheet builder into it so that it's capable of logging items. So now that I fixed those, the last thing I need to do is I need to update these to-dos. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do it on my tests. I'm just going to pass in a dummy file location. So that'll fix my tests. Now, there's another test I need to do. So I'm going to do new file location test, line of 4, char position of 4. Now there's one last thing I need to do. I need to update the ANTLR grammar to pass in the file location into my set property. So if you guys recall, in my ANTLR tree grammar, I have an action down here called rule style builder set property. What I need to do here is I need to pass in the current file location. So there's a couple ways I could do that. I think what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to create a method called getCurrentFileLocation, and I need, oh wait a sec, this is going to be interesting. Well, I need to pass in a token. So the token that I'm going to pass in is going to be the property. So getCurrentFileLocation is going to be a method on my tree that is going to take in a property. And when I say property, I meant token. Well, when I said token, I meant the property token. Okay, so because I just edited my tree grammar, I have to jump into my file thingy and launch my thing on my stuff. Where are you? I can't even remember where I put this project. Here you are. Okay. So I'm just going to have ANTLR recompile that for me, which should result in, okay, blah, 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 cannot convert void into file location. Well, of course you can't. What was I thinking? Argument type common tree is not assignable to type common token. Okay, so I actually need to take in a common tree, and I need to return a file location. Now this should build, or not. Well, yeah, it's not going to build because not all code paths return a thing on the stuff. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to return a new instantiation of a file location. So I need to get the file, and then I need to get the line number, and I need the character position. Now the file is really easy because that's coming straight out of my file parameter that's passed into the constructor. So next up, I'm going to go ahead and do line. Now my line number is going to be tree.line, which that's really handy. And then my character position is going to be tree.characterPosition in line. That's really handy too. And now we compile. And now I get errors when a property is invalid, or there's not a valid property name for something. Okay, so now that we've done that, I also need to do errors for when properties are not right. Which means I need to replace all of these throw new invalid operation exceptions with log messages. So I'm actually going to leave that to after break. We'll get that wrapped up, and then we'll have proper error handling in our project. So far we have parser errors being printed out, and we have unknown property errors being printed out. But the last one that we'll need are invalid properties being printed out. So, yeah. Okay, we're back. So now what we need to do is we need to have our properties be able to, well, not throw exceptions. Probably should have done this while I was coding it, but I didn't. I'm a terrible person. So let's go ahead and figure out how we're going to do this. What I want to do is each one of my properties needs something passed into its set method in order to, or some sort of object passed into the set method to perform some sort of handling. Now, this is going to be fun. The reason this is going to be fun is because I want to abstract out the concept of a file location from my properties themselves, because I don't want to have to pass in a logger and a file location into every one of my set methods, because that would be super redundant. So guess what that calls for? That calls for an interface. Not an enumeration, an interface. There we go. Now the interface that I'm going to create is a iStyleSheet log. The iStyleSheet log is going to have a couple methods on it. It's basically going to have two methods on it. I'm going to have a style sheet log item level string message, and it's going to have a log format with a level string format params object args. So here's my style sheet log. Now my style sheet log is going to be passed in to my set method on my properties. So if I go into my iProperty, I have a set method. I'm going to pass in an iStyleSheet log into it. Then I'm going to tell ReSharper to implement it everywhere, which that was really ineffective. Come on. Oh, okay, let's try this again. Okay, close the file, jump back into property. I'm going to create iStyleSheet log, alt enter, and then apply change signature refactoring, and hit next. I'm going to leave the code as non-compilable so that I get build errors. And then I'm going to have that happen. Okay. So now I should have a couple build errors. Well, I only have one build error, and that's on my setProperty method. So my setProperty method needs to have an iStyleSheet builder log that's passed into property. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a internal style sheet. What do I call that interface? Style sheet log. I'm going to create an internal style sheet log class. Whoops, no, internal, that implements the iStyleSheet log interface, and it's going to take in a constructor parameter of a style sheet builder. Style sheet builder is going to be used to perform the actual logging, and I'm also going to have a public property called file location with a public getter and a public setter. Okay, my log format method is going to be written in terms of my log method, which is going to be pretty straightforward. Log format is simply going to invoke log. It's going to pass in the level, then it's going to pass in string.format args. My log method is first going to make sure that location does not equal null. If it does, I'll say location can make null, and then I'll say builder.log new log item, passing in message, level, and location. All right. So does that sound good for everyone? Basically, all this class does is it abstracts away my file location so that I don't have to thread it through into each one of my properties. Because now what I can do is I can go into my style builder and I'm going to instantiate a builder log equals new style sheet log, passing in itself. Oh, no, stop that madness. What did I just do? There we go. Wait a sec, I needed a style sheet builder. No, I'm going to pass in builder. And then I'm going to turn this into a field. There we go. Then, right before I invoke this, I'm going to say builder log.location equals file location, and then I'm going to pass builder log straight into property. So now if I build, all of my tests should pass. And I can now write another test that's going to test setting a property to an invalid thing. So I'm going to say invalid property causes log item. Now I'm not going to test every single permutation of every single thing that you can get wrong with a property, but I am going to go ahead and test one. Let's go ahead and try to set background, or let's set color to a new numeric number value 50% or 5%. Okay, so then what should happen is I should get an error, and for the error I'm going to say color must be set to an RGB hex value or named color. Okay, so this test shouldn't pass, and it doesn't. I get expected color or named color. So what's happening is we are getting an exception on my getColorValue method. So you guys remember my getColorValue method? And then my getResourceValue and my getNumberValue, my getIdentifierValue. Well, these are methods on my property base that are written just to make things a little bit easier. Because if I looked at my property types, my color is a color property base, and his set method just sets color to get color value. So let's go ahead and fix this. So what needs to happen is I need to pass in my style sheet log into my get color value. So I'm going to say I style sheet log, and then I'm going to apply change signature refactoring, and then I'm going to do something really cool with 3Sharper, where when you apply a change signature refactoring and you add in a new parameter, you can tell it to guess as to what item to fill it with. So I'm going to say use unique value of type iStyleSheetLog at the point of call if it exists. So now everything that uses this, you'll see that it will pass the log right into it. Except for it's not going to be able to do that for the get border for values, because there's no log that exists there. So that just means I need to thread through my iStyleSheetLog log into it, which necessitates I pass log into that, and I pass log into that, and then I pass log into that. Okay, so let's go ahead and perform that exact same thing with all of my other getters, my helpers right here. So I'm not going to do try get color from identifier because that can return false if I want it to, but I am going to have to do it for get resource value. So apply change signature refactoring, and then use unique value. And then I'm going to do it for my get numeric value, use unique value. And then I'm going to do it for my identifier value, use unique value. And then I'm going to do it for my get value, which actually, the funny thing is that's just going to change, that's just going to rewrite all my code up here, which that's cool. So now, instead of throwing in new invalid operation exception, I can now do something different. So I can go ahead and say log.log error expected blank value so expected one blah, and then I'm going to say expected blah. Whoops. And then I'm going to pass in, I'm going to pass in a new string, so string type. This method is really getting ugly. I don't like it. But the thing about ugly methods is when they're just used 3 times in the same file, I guess I'm updating Java now. Anyway, the method's only used 3 times in the same file. I don't really care how ugly it looks. So expected one, this is going to be identifier. Expected one numeric value. Expected one resource value. Okay, so how's everyone feeling about that? So now when I build, I get build succeeded, which is nice. So I think that's actually going to make my test kind of work. Expected color or named color? No, it's not going to work. Because yeah, I'm not even using my log here. I'm going to say log.log error expected one color or named color, and then this is going to be expected color or named color. And then I'm going to jump back into this, and yeah. Location cannot be null. Why is location null? Oh, pfft. See, nobody caught that? Come on. Is anybody watching? Boolean logic is really hard. Okay, so now that I fixed that sanity check, which the sanity check itself was broken, I get a success. So now my log messages are being handled properly. Okay, so now what I need to do is I need to find every single instance of a throwing an exception in any of my properties. So I'm going to search for throw new in current project with the ending, so blank property.cs. And here are each of the exceptions that I've been throwing in my properties. And I need to fix them to use my log now. So basically it's going to turn into this. Log.log. I no longer need the string format because I have a log format method. Error blank. There we go. And then blah, blah, do that. Rerun the search. Okay, background property is not, wait, what? Lies. Ah, there we go. Hey, does anybody know the keyboard shortcut to repeat a search? Something I've never actually looked into before. Ooh, one thing that I do need to do, I really need to be careful about this, is if there was an error, then I need to stop setting. Hmm. Well, that just throws a wrench in everything now, doesn't it? Because that was the one nice thing about exceptions that I got, is it stopped doing anything. Okay, so let's look at color. Color is a color property base. Color equals get color value. Unfortunately, this is going to error out. You know what? I'm not going to use the log for errors. Well, I am, but not at this level. Well, So, So right now I have a decision to make. Am I going to violate a rule of programming standards in order to make my code cleaner? Or am I going to introduce a ridiculous amount of Boolean logic into my code to make it a little bit in less violation? I'm just going to go ahead and violate that. Screw it. I'm the programmer. I get to do what I want. What I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce a new exception type, and the new exception type is going to be property value invalid exception of type exception, and it's going to take in a, oh come on, I'm going to have a string I'm going to have a type property string property name string message I enumerable of I value values. Okay, so let's go ahead and correct all of those log.log formats. So log.log, I have 2 in my background property. Well, hold on. Let me just find it for everything. Okay, so this is going to be pro new get type property name. I actually don't know the property name from this point. I'm going to remove property name from it. I don't need it. The location is enough. Get type, and then the message is going to be that. Honestly, I don't even need the values. Don't care about that either. That's kind of worthless information that I'm never going to use. Aren't you glad we have all these tests to make sure I'm not going to accidentally break anything? Because I'm sitting here like doing some major changes to my code base. Okay, there we go. That's what I want. Or no, I honestly wasn't even paying attention to what I was doing. I think I just could have introduced an error in my style builder. No. Yep. Okay, good. Sweet. Awesome. Okay, so let's go ahead and find all of my throw news in my property.cs files and change them from invalid operation exceptions to property value blah 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 type of border property. There we go. Now, that should mean that even if the user tried to set a value or property to an invalid value, that property should always have the defaults set on it. Which, let's do a quick run through to make sure I set everything to their proper defaults, because if I don't, we will run into lots of issues. Okay, so for background, I need to set, actually no, null is a valid color value for the background, and image is also allowed to be null. Quad numeric property base, they're all set to 0 points and none. That's good. Borders are all set to new border, which are set to black. Good. Bottom should be defaulted to 0. Yeah, it'll be default to 0 anyway. Color should default to black, which it does. Cursor is red. Flow is an enumeration. So it should be defaulted to vertical. Font can be null, so I'm not going to worry about that. Height 0, image position is an enum, it'll be default to image left. Left will be 0, margin will be 0, offset will be 0, overflow will be 0, padding position will default to static, which is what I want. Right will be 0, selection color will be blue, text to line will be lower center. I don't really like that. Never mind, I can't even do it from here, I don't care. Just as long as it's not ever invalid. That's all I care about. Okay, so now if I run all my tests... Oh, I'm throwing the exception, but I'm not catching it. Derp. Okay, so what I need to do is inside my compiler, or sorry, my engine internal style builder, I need to try this, try to set it. If you catch a property value invalid exception, then I'm going to say builder log.log item new. Then I'm going to pass in, oh, come on, error with a message of ex.message. Well, hey, look at that. Okay, so hopefully that means that everything won't break. Alright, so now I am making sure that I'm logging out parser errors, unknown property errors, and invalid property errors. And that's pretty much all I need. So, what's next? Well, I guess we can start thinking about Unity at this point, because there's not a whole lot left that I really need to do. Except for my style builder. I need to have multiple style sheets work with my environment. So I need to be able to register style sheets and unregister style sheets. I also need to be able to cache my computed styles. So let's go ahead and finish writing this. I'm going to go ahead and write one more test. I'm going to create an environment test. And it's just going to be one test. So that I can have multiple style sheets. So I'll go ahead and say var env equals new style sheet, or what I call that, CGS Environment, env dot, wait a sec, env just has a create builder on it, doesn't it? It's not actually coupled whatsoever into my compiler. Which, you know, I'm not really against. So I'll go ahead and say var, actually, what does my compiler, you know, I don't like that the compiler takes in an iStyleSheet builder, because that means I'll have to reinstantiate my compiler every single time that I want to build out a new style sheet. You know, honestly, I don't even like the fact that this is a non-static class. This should be a static class. I'm going to make it a static class. What should we make it a static class? Blah, 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 blah. There's no reason for this to be an instance class. Well, I mean, obviously, you should be really, really careful with what you make static, but in reality, this is nothing more than basically one method that takes in one of three sets of parameters. There's really no reason for it to be an instance class. Now it's going to break some of my code, unfortunately. So this is going to be style sheet compiler dot compile fake builder, and then this input. No reason for it to be a singleton either. This class is not, like I said, this class is nothing more than three methods. There's no state. This class doesn't contain state. All it does is ties together my lexer, my parser, my tree. Everything that needs to be abstracted out is already abstracted out by my iStyleSheet builder. So there's really no reason. So now what I can do is I can say style sheet builder or style sheet compiler.compile, passing in env.create builder, and then an input of test, color red, border 1 pixel solid blue, and then style sheet compiler compile env create builder dot test, border left size 5 pixels, background red. Okay. Now, unfortunately, actually, hold on. I never invoke the. Wait a sec. This API is getting really out of control. I have a create builder method on my environment, but actually, what this needs to be, I'm going to yeah. Here's what I'm going to do. Build style sheets action of type style sheet builder. There we go. This is actually going to be really sexy. Okay, so builder.build, that's going to create a that's going to register a new style sheet, and it's going to pass the style sheet back out so that we can unregister it later. For now, I'm just going to return builder.build. Okay, so that means that my thing is now going to look like this. It's going to be env.build style sheet, builder goes into style sheet compiler.compile builder, and then input. And that looks a whole lot sexier. Okay, so now I should be able to say var element equals new element with the element type of a span and a class name of test. Then style equals env. Now the environment itself should be able to get a style for an element. So get style for element, which I want to use the same terminology I used on my style sheet. So I'm going to say build style for element. So then I'm going to say style dot, well, let me go ahead and stub out my build style for element first. I computed style takes in an I element. I don't even know why I made element and interface. Whatever. So then I'm going to say style dot get property color property color should be color value of colors.red. Get property border property dot left dot width dot should be 5, and then the right width should be 1, and then style get property background property dot color should be new color value red. So really, all the code that's gone into this entire project has basically amounted to what we're looking at right here. I mean, that's basically it. Now, the purpose of the environment is going to be to contain multiple style sheets. Also, to be able to cache styles for elements. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a private read-only list of, whoops, I already have a style sheets list, don't I? So I'm going to create a private read-only dictionary of string I computed style. style cache, which, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and instantiate. Then after I build a style sheet, I need to, so let's go ahead and say var style sheet equals .build style sheets .add style sheet, and then I need to invalidate my entire cache, and then I need to return the style sheet. Then I need a public void remove style sheet, style sheet, which will say style sheets dot remove style sheet, and then it'll say style cache dot clear. Then build cache for element will go ahead and get an ID. So the element's unique ID is always going to be element dot unique ID. The unique ID, remember how I implemented this. The unique ID is basically the description of the entire element in its hierarchy, which means that an element that has one description in the hierarchy is always going to be the same as another element, is always going to have the same styles as another element with the same in the same hierarchy. So yeah, stuff and things. I computed style if style cache try get value ID out style, then I'm going to return style. Otherwise, I need to build the style. So to build the style, I'm going to say style equals new computed style this, for each var sheet in style sheets, build style for, This build style for element method is actually going to be problematic. I'm going to create an overload that takes in an I-computed style for it. The reason I'm doing that is I need to be able to create styles that span multiple style sheets. Then I'm going to do this. Oh, what are you complaining about? No. This is going to take in a computed style. Yeah, not the interface. And then this is going to be written in terms of the other one. Okay, that's better. So now I'm going to jump back into my CGS environment. So I had to say build style for element, passing in style and computed style. Now the sheets themselves actually are not going to be iStyle sheets, they are going to be style sheets. The reason I want that is because then I'll be able to access properties that are only accessible from within this one namespace. Now I know that every single style sheet that gets instantiated by the environment is going to be of this particular type because I'm instantiating this particular builder, which is also an internal class. So now what are you complaining about? Argument type is not assignable to parameter. Huh? What am I missing? I'm doing something dumb right here. What? That's not possible. Can I convert from iComputed style to computed style? Yeah, I know. That's not what I'm trying to... Oh, derp. Way to go, Nelson. There we go. Okay, now I can go ahead and say return style cache at ID equals style. There we go. So obviously this isn't thread safe, but it shouldn't have to be. I care less about the environment itself because being thread safe because we don't have to worry about that. Expected 5 but found 1. So the left width should be 5. Oh. There we go. Found 0. Wait, what? Madness. Is it size or is it width? It's width. Okay. So expected 1, but founded. Wow, really, Nelson? Found 0. Left width and right width. Left width should be 5. The right width should be 1. Because of this declaration up here. So it doesn't look like our style is getting combined properly. Oh, you know what it could be? Could be no, it's not. Weird. Alright, let's figure this out. And that's why we write tests. So the computed style has a bunch of properties and, oh god, you piece of, come on. And it has a border property, and the border property has a bottom of 0. Huh? Now it says it's set. It looks like I have a bug in my border property. How can I have a bug in my border property if I tested it? No. When I override it, I should only override the left width. I shouldn't override anything else. So it looks like I have a okay, so I guess I did find a bug. Wonderful. That's not what I wanted to deal with right now. Expected object of B. Order color is that. What is 5? Color is blank. So it looks like what's happening with my border property is that if it's not within the same rule, it's not working. For some reason. That's probably has to do with my style builder. Probably has to do with a bug in here somewhere. Or not. Wonder if it's in my rule. Style.apply properties. Wait. Okay, so I'm combining a border property with the old property. The old property should have a weight of 0. It does. And the new property has a weight of 2. Now I'm doing it again with a weight of 2, so can override is set to true. The old property should be a border with everything set to black and 5. No. I'm only setting border left to black and 5. If I jump back all the way back on my call stack, is that correct? Border left is red. What? No? Wow, my border is all sorts of messed up right now. Huh. How did this get past my testing? So the old property has a width of 0. Oh, everything is 0. Okay, I'm going to make debugging this a whole lot easier. Give me 1 second. I'm going to jump into my border property. No, stop this. Jump into my border property. Us has same problem. What do you mean? Public override void. Oh, come on, why can't I type anymore? ToString return border left is that border, no, border left, right, top, bottom. Okay, so the border should be 1 pixel blue in every direction. The border left should be red. So then the border left width should be 5 pixels. So left is 5, right is 0, top is 0, bottom is 0. And they're all black, including left. So somehow setting border left width is screwing that up, because if I delete this and rerun the test, then we have a border left of 1, right of 1, top of 1, bottom of 1, and they're all blue except for red. Okay, so it breaks down when I try to do this, border left width of 5. So if I jump into my property types, and it's like, what property am I setting again? I'm setting border left width, so that's going to be this code right here. With width sets that all correctly, which means if I get to here, it should be all right. Yeah, and then this is, nothing is set on any of these. And then only the width is set on the left border. So then when I go to combine it, so when I combine left, I should do if our border's color is set, which, what am I combining with? Well, no, it should be the, let's just run through this code itself. Incoming border, our border. New border color equals our border dot color. If our set and we can't override. Oh, don't tell me it's this code. I hate this code so much. This code needs to die in a fire. Oh, that's what I'm not checking for. Yeah. No? Yeah. Right. Because if our border is color set and we can override, or they're not set. So if our border is set and they cannot override, or their border is not set, well, hey, look at that. Well, it's nice I got that error fixed, but that means I could quite potentially have a lot of other issues. Because if image is not set or we can override, if image is not set or we can override and they're set, because they have to be set, but if we're yeah, I bet you I can write another test right now that'll completely break everything again. Yeah, you guys want to see everything break again? Because I bet if I do background values override, I'll do background as red, and then I'll do background on the other, I'll do another one, test, and I'll do background image. The color is not going to be right. Nope. The color is null. That means all of my properties are actually broken. And I bet I can do it again with offset. Actually, no. For some reason, offset seems like it's working. Why is offset working? Offset's dumb. Let's not do it with offset. Let's do it with font. Oh, wait a sec. I'm already... Yeah, for some reason, font and overflow both seem to be working. So how did I implement those in... Oh, because I implemented them properly for some reason, but I failed to implement the other ones properly. Okay, so let's take a look at our colors. if we are set and they can't override. So if we're not set or they can override, then we use theirs. I think that works. I think it's just for the ones that have multiple components within them. Like, for example, the background property, let's go ahead and fix that. So if hate Boolean logic. Okay, so here's the algorithm that works. If not set, or we can override, and incoming background is image set, and incoming background is color set. There we go. So that should fix my background value override test. Okay, and it does. So what else could be broken? Maybe my quad numeric properties. Nope, that looks like quad numeric properties work. Cursor color, no. Flow, that's just an enum. Font, I already implemented correctly for the first time around anyway. Image position is just an enum, that's just a numeric property, that's a quad numeric. Offset, I implemented correctly. Overflow is a quad numeric, that's a quad numeric, that's an enum. That's a numeric, that's a color, that's an enum, that's an enum. That's a numeric, that's a numeric, and that's an enum. Okay, so I think all of my properties are done. $120 tests. So again, all of this boils down to what we have right here. We instantiate a CGS environment. We use our compiler to compile a couple style sheets. We instantiate our elements, and then we get a style from the element. So basically, these 3 blocks of code is what we're going to be looking at doing next week when we're finally getting into Unity. Because we need to instantiate our CGS environment and create style sheet file watchers for all of our style sheets in our project. Then we need to write an API for instantiating hierarchies of elements using syntax that doesn't drive you insane like the current GUI layout. Then we need to write code that will translate our properties into GUI styles. So, yeah. Those are going to be the 3 steps we'll have to go through for getting this into Unity. Unfortunately, not all of it will be super fun because we're going to have to do some nasty, nasty things to handle things like widths and heights, and we'll also have to deal with mouse overs and yeah, we basically have a bunch of stuff. Okay. Well, yeah, Unity's GUI system is horribly unusable. That's the point of CGS, and that's also why I'm making such a massive focus on making CGS not specific to Unity's GUI system. Unfortunately, we're also going to have to do some nasty reflection and reach into the internals of Unity in order to do some of the calculations we need to do. So I hope everyone's looking forward to that. Alrighty, so is everybody good? Alrighty. So I guess that wraps up today's thing. See all you future people later.